Okay.
Right.
I call the meeting to order. I think we're in compliance with the Freedom of Information Act. And we're gonna take time to go around and before we do anything else, introduce ourselves since some of us are new, and some of us bring a lot of talent and experience to the table. So I'm gonna start with you, Molly, and just before we go around the room.
Sure. And I do want to say the Freedom of Information Act thing, just to.
No, go ahead, please.
So this meeting was notified in accordance with the Freedom of Information Act. It was notified to the news media and all folks that were interested in getting that notification. Okay, so my name is Molly Cajano. I am the Resilience and Sustainability Manager here at the county. I started just before the holidays along with my two colleagues here. So we are just forming this team together. I came from Portland, Oregon most recently. I was working in emergency management there for the last 5 years and doing resilience planning and more like operational work, but my focus shifted into resilience planning, hazard mitigation, and that's what sort of attracted me over here. But my educational background is in land use planning. I have a master's in urban planning from the University of Oregon and a bachelor's in public policy from DePaul University in Chicago. So I'm originally from the Midwest, bounced from coast to coast. So I'm glad to be here. And Allie, I'll pass to you.
Hi, everyone. My name's Allie Petruch. I'm originally from New Jersey, but then I came down here to get my double master's at the College of Charleston, where I have a master's in environmental sustainability studies as well as public administration. And my thesis focused on food resiliency within Charleston County and food apartheid areas. And I was working for the sustainability department at the College of Charleston, where I was running their internship program as well as implementing their sustainable action plan. And I'm the sustainability coordinator here at the county.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Allie. Thank you, Molly. My name is David Rode, and I'm the project officer with the group here. I am a Carolina boy. I was raised in North Carolina, but now I love to call the Low Country home. And I've been here for about 4 years. I've been with the county since June and have transitioned into the Resiliency and Sustainability Division, really to focus on energy efficiency and our electrification of our fleet. So I've come with a political background. I previously was working for members of Congress in the United States House of Representatives. And I'm really enjoy to be in this space because it's about efficiency and delivering on that double bottom line that we have as trustees of our government and having a commitment to transparency while doing so. So that's a little bit about me. Feel free to ask me any questions if you'd like. I'm really excited to get to know the group a bit more as we transition through explaining the climate action plan.
I'm Scott Harris. I'm with the College of Charleston. I'm like the newest member. Is that correct? Maybe.
Yeah, one or two.
Okay.
Right.
And I've been a coastal scientist. I study modern coast as well as ancient coast. Coastal plain continental shelf, using lots of different methods. I've told a few of y'all this morning already. And doing a lot of mapping, a lot of GIS, and lots of other things. So if you're interested, I can go into more detail. But I've been there since 2007. I've been living in Charleston. I was in Myrtle Beach area before coastal Carolina, and I actually did my dissertation work for the Charleston area, I don't know, 5 years ago, 20 years ago, 30, whenever that was.
Hi everyone, my name is Diamond Curry. I work for the Charleston Metro Chamber of Commerce as the Government Relations Manager. Prior to that, I was actually at Charleston County with Christine Durant. The county was working on their housing renovation plan. So that is my conclusion.
Welcome.
I'm Stuart Weinberg. I'm just a little veteran volunteer.
Adrian Kane, CEO of the Charleston and Hilton Head Homeowners Associations across the 7-county region from the Georgia border to Georgetown. So thank you all. Chairman.
Scott Curtis from Citadel. I direct the Near Center for Climate Studies. That I've been here and that's been around since 2020. My background is atmospheric oceanic sciences. I have a PhD in that area. And most of my research is focused on climate hazards in the low country, whether that be heat or flooding or some other issues related to that. So yeah.
Great. I'm Sally Brooks. So I'm in the zoning and planning department. I've been here since 2007. Landscape architect with the University of Georgia. My function in zoning and planning is I'm technically the zoning administrator, but site plan review, any permitting, site development, also a certified arborist. So I'm really interested in how we can kind of like take these big moves and anything we can incorporate into the zoning ordinance. So that would be my
So I'm Nina Miller, and I'm working for the PCD COG. I've been working there since July this year or last year, and I'm from Sweden. So, but I lived here for 4 years in Charleston.
Walt, you have to introduce yourself. Walt Smalls, Deputy County Administrator, General Services, and the Sustainability and Resilience fall under my directorate. And I've been here almost forever, 25 years. But I'm happy to see all the new faces and ready to get to work.
I'm Kyle James. I'm a regional planner at BCD COG with Nina, and I was on this committee before, so just showing up for the transition.
You want to introduce?
Oh, hi, I'm Fiedel Verma, and I'm Walt's executive assistant. I like to be a shy.
You guys want to introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Adelaide Bates. I work for Furman University, but I work with some jurisdictions in the area on resilience building initiatives.
Hi, I'm Catherine Min. I'm with the South Carolina Office of Resilience. I'm the CNT watershed coordinator, so I'm also working with jurisdictions.
Can I have a motion to approve the February 27th, 2024 meeting minutes? Second?
second.
Any conversation, discussions, corrections? All in favor? All right, now we have to vote for my replacement or whatever. Really need to do this really on a volunteer basis. And I've said to both Molly and Allie that I would volunteer to continue unless there's somebody else in the room who really wants it. And I don't have a problem passing the torch.
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, we need a vice chair. Somebody please volunteer. No, you can't do it. No, you can't. It's good. Nina, would you like to volunteer as Scott?
Well, if it's possible,
Yeah.
I mean, I don't have any experience on the committee yet.
You'll get experience.
Yeah, I'd be happy to work with you.
Thank you.
That'd be awesome.
All right, all in favor? Aye. Okay, there you go.
Man, if government was always that easy.
I'm on a number of boards, so David, you should come to some of my board meetings.
Yeah, I would be great.
All right, so I'm gonna turn it over to Molly.
Okay, yeah, thank you, Stuart, and thank you, Scott, for jumping in. So yeah, thank you everyone for being here. This is the first Resilience and Sustainability Advisory Committee meeting since February of last year. So we have a lot to catch up on. We have a lot of really great projects to share with you and just kind of letting you know where we fall. Like we mentioned, all three of us, David, Allie, and I just started just before the holidays. So we're trying to really just kind of formalize this group, formalize this division, set some goals and a mission for ourselves, and see how we can really merge the environmental stewardship of sustainability with more of the hazard risk reduction focus of resilience. So we'll start going through this here. So we met the team a little bit just now, but this is us, Resilience and Sustainability Manager, Sustainability Coordinator, and Officer. So my role in this division is really more on the resilience side of things, so bringing that emergency management perspective and trying to oversee kind of how we can be resilience oriented in a lot of our planning and thinking, but still maintain the, the sustainability aspect of, sustainable living, and a lot of the projects and programs that our predecessors started, like recycling, composting, all of those types of things. We're trying to merge these together. And I think I'll make this statement that I think in the kind of shifting priorities that we're experiencing at the national level, that this sort of not merger, but more like intentional formalization of resilience and sustainability together is really going to help us kind of leverage each other's work and help us bring partnerships together, help us have more of a presence in the county too as a county-wide leaders, right, to pull these two things together. And then David is supporting both of our projects with, like he said, his interest in energy efficiency and electrification. So that is us. So since our last meeting in February, County Council approved the Climate Action Plan, which I believe many of you were involved in the development of that plan. So the main goal in that is to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions by 65% by 2035 and 95% by 2050. And we are doing this by implementing the 5 big moves and the 53 actions or strategies that were identified to do that. So that is, that's a little bit about what we're going to present to you today of how we're making progress on that. The multi-hazard vulnerability and risk assessment was also completed in October of 2024. In that, there are 11 strategies and actions for increasing resilience. And I'll talk a little bit about some of those projects that we're working on to complete that plan. The other big part of this hazard vulnerability and risk assessment is that there was a ton of data collected for climate modeling, future projections of what our risk is going to look like that are a little bit more advanced and I think forward-looking than the previous models that we were using, and certainly more advanced than what's in our hazard mitigation plan. So I think this is going to be a really great tool to kind of inform a lot of the planning work that we're doing, just because there's so much data in there. So, and that project we were working with Fernleaf Consulting. And then, of course, our Resilience and Sustainability Division was kind of formalized a couple of months ago. So the Resilience and Sustainability Division, I wanted just to give kind of an overarching kind of view of what I think this is going to look like. So I think our main mission is to guide and coordinate a countywide approach to resilience. Because right now we see that there's a lot of initiatives, resilience initiatives, things that are happening all over the county that are fantastic. But I think the county would like to have a role in harnessing all of those, kind of coordinating them a little bit better, formalizing those partnerships and those relationships. So to do this, we want to collaborate with the partners who are already doing all this work and partner with them to implement strategies that will, again, enhance sustainability, identify those risks, and then implement mitigation and adaptation solutions that support post-recovery. So with the mitigation and adaptation solutions, this is where I think our division can play more of that role as a bridge or as a connector to other disciplines within the county who are working on mitigation, who are working on recovery and response and preparedness, but our role is sort of that convener to be that central kind of point of contact to make sure all these parts are working together. So some objectives are to identify our capabilities, challenges, and risks to all hazards, implement the climate action plan, the vulnerability assessment, and then of course conduct community outreach and public education. That's another big component of our division, is to really be transparent about what we're doing and intentionally communicate a lot of the strategies and the actions that we're taking to meet these goals. And then ultimately, I'd love if we could help identify a regional vision for resilience. Regional meaning countywide is what I'm learning, that regional is really just the county. but that's my.
We object.
Yeah, well, yes, of course. We do have other folks here too. So yes, regional could expand beyond, absolutely.
I definitely see that as regional, as in the Tri-County region.
Okay.
Berkeley, Winchester, and Charleston, in that scope.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know if you're aware that the COG is starting a process which will include Dorchester and Berkeley. So eventually, when they're completed,
Absolutely.
it's really gonna come together. I have a question. Have we started to identify the partners, the potential partners, and make a list of all those potential partners?
Yes,
And
yes,
if you get a chance, maybe you can share that with us
sure.
to see if any of us would like to add any, but that would be a good starting point.
Absolutely.
And then talk about meeting with those individuals and how we're going to start that process of really collaborating.
Absolutely.
Really important because there are so many pieces out there. We know that every organization has an executive director and they all have their own responsibilities and their own goals, but it's important for us to see if we can coordinate.
Exactly. Yes.
And certainly even mission, goals, objectives, you know, and broadly, you know, it's resilience heavy, you know, sustainability and resilience. Resilience is different in the sense that adaptation is one thing, but that doesn't solve the problem. And so, you know, the mitigation and being very truthful as to, because, you know, when we fix something over here as it relates to, okay, we're going to solve flooding, and we're going to solve flooding through this intervention. Well, that may have fixed it here, but then the water just went somewhere else. And so we really haven't solved the flooding problem. We just adapted that. And so sometimes I think we are, and I get it, you know, because we'll run toward resilience because that's where people are comfortable. That's where it seems to be, if we're looking at a political sort of safe landing place, that probably would be it. You know, the sustainability piece requires people to do something very different than what they have done in the past. And so I know that that's not the popular path, but I do feel that that is the stewardship area that would be the most responsible environmentally.
Leading with sustainability, essentially. Yes.
Yeah, that's well taken.
Anybody here feel free to comment?
Particularly in an area, I would say a region, and when I say a region, I mean the entire region, and more specifically in Charleston County, where we would infill anything. And that certainly has created the problem that we're in. And as it relates to, you know, the resiliency efforts, then we try to, you know, put a Band-Aid on it through, you know, different adaptation solutions, you know, which don't really work over time. So through our zoning ordinance changes, you know, pervious versus impervious, you know, it would be cheaper, you know, using, you know, one product over the other, but over time, I mean, you need places for water to soak into and not just run off of, because it creates, you know, flooding and or ponding or an entire lake, you know, for somebody else. So I just think that when looking, you know, through this, and I know everybody wants to be safe and protective of their jobs, and certainly wants to have something that's palatable, you know, for people who are, I guess I become the highest person to go to, right?
Yeah, right.
Yeah, but before it gets to me, then it gets to, you know, we gotta go through the rest of the hoops internally. Well, we want to try to eliminate those. And so, you know, I'm just saying that, you know, I do recognize the safety in the language, and I do recognize that every word matters. And so that sustainability piece, although we've merged the two, they used to be two separate, independent, freestanding, you know, departments or offices or whatever. And so we've merged the work, but we cannot merge, you know, the spirit of what each independent component does.
Yeah, I agree, and I think that speaks a little bit to the regulatory aspect of this versus the voluntary, right? And having the folks who, you know, a lot of the folks who do that voluntary work are more those environmental stewards who take it upon themselves to compost and recycle and those types of things. And the public engagement and outreach piece is so critical and so
And the
important.
education.
And the education, yeah.
Well, take advantage of me being chair.
Yeah.
Because,
Right.
having a chair who, gets this type of thing and
Absolutely.
pushes it and promotes it,
Mhm.
the window is open.
Yes.
And so
We're
when
happy
it
to have you.
closes, it may be closed,
Yeah.
for a long time, but we want to make sure that we're capitalizing on the moment. And I don't want us to be so safe
Absolutely.
that we're not pushing toward those things that are not necessarily voluntary, but some things we're gonna have to codify.
And if I could add on to Reverend Middleton's comments, for those of you who are new, if you want to get an idea of something that is really expansive and looking at those issues, I would refer you back to the Dutch dialogues that was done a number of years ago in the city of Charleston. You could just go to the city of Charleston and look up Dutch dialogues, just Google Dutch dialogues. I don't expect anyone here to read the entire volume, but it'll give you an idea exactly what Reverend Middleton said, that you do something here and no one's looking at that it affects over there and how important it is. So just if you can, skim through that and you get an idea of how it's important to look at the entire picture, just not look at an individual spot.
And I take this very seriously because I'm the one that launched it all, right? As it relates to the climate action plan, the climate action resolution that then gave birth, to the imperative of the creation of the climate action plan. Certainly we did have the resiliency piece, and then we added the sustainability piece as a result. But again, as we move forward with the work, it is so important to make certain, that you all are given full breath to do it. So thank you.
We appreciate that. Thank you. Okay, so I'm going to speak a little bit about the strategies that we've identified for collaboration in more of the resilience sphere, and then mention a couple of quick projects before passing it off to Allie to talk more about the climate action plan. So for collaboration, this is really the key to resilience, I think, is convening folks, coordinating and collaborating. So I'm labeling this as these strategies because these are still sort of still in the planning phases. We're identifying partners, we're trying to get folks together. So it's a little bit nebulous right now, but what we're thinking is having an internal interdepartmental resilience working group that has staff focused, so we can align our plans, our projects, and kind of move together as a internal county. So we're looking at models for how to organize that structure. The external collaboration is also identifying partners, right? Getting this understanding of what the landscape is, who are the partners who are already doing this work. We don't need to reinvent the wheel. We just want to harness what folks are doing and help leverage, help fill gaps, kind of understand where the county can support or step in and lead if that's what's needed. So we attended a regional resilience forum that the COG put on last week that was fantastic. It was kind of that first start, at least for me, to see what other partners and agencies in Adelaide, and Catherine, of course, were there too. And it was a really good showing of kind of all of the jurisdictions, municipalities, folks coming together. So we're hoping to continue coordinating on that. And then the Coastal Resilience Forum, we have to remember that we have a lot of different geography in Charleston County, and the Coastal Resilience Forum is almost its own discussion, to see. They have just such different initiatives and needs and all of that. So we're trying to pull all of those together, right? We're acknowledging that there's differences and still trying to connect folks. And then I lastly wanted to throw out this coordination with the state, South Carolina Emergency Management Department, as well as the Charleston County Emergency Management Department, because I'm seeing that our role in resilience and sustainability is, again, to build those bridges. But I think it's really important that we build that relationship with our emergency management partners, especially in mitigation and recovery planning. they're very good at response. They've got a lot of focus on response and they're gonna handle that really well. But I think where we can support is again in these mitigation project areas where, you know, they might not have as much capacity, but we might have more connections with planning and zoning or other folks who are, you know, working more on these hazard mitigation planning work. And then recovery planning, this is more, I want to bring in my experience doing recovery planning because I think it's really important. Pulling partners together before a disaster happens, knowing that those relationships exist and you can call on your folks after a disaster. All of that work needs to happen before the disaster, right? So recovery planning in my mind is putting together a VOAD or a voluntary organizations active in disaster. That's it's a pretty standard group that it's sort of an emergency management term, but it's essentially a group of community-based organizations, faith-based partners who support community needs after a disaster. This is also leading into understanding what our volunteer donations management plan is going to look like when after a disaster, folks just come out of the woodwork to give, you know, donations and help, and we need to figure out a way to coordinate that and have places to go. And then disaster recovery centers is the third element of that, where that's more of a identifying locations that the communities that our community partners already are attracted to and feel supported by and identify with, and just building those up to give resources after a disaster. So that's sort of another added element that we're going to bring into this division. And then real quickly, a couple of the more tangible projects I can share that are more resilience oriented. The Flood Mitigation Framework Project, as well as the Brownfields Redevelopment and Community Revitalization Project. Both of these projects came out of the Hazard, Vulnerability, and Risk Assessment. So there's strategies 1 and 11, I believe. And the Flood Mitigation Framework is essentially a project to define criteria that will make it easier for us to select what flood mitigation projects we're going to be taking on next, and aligning that with the project pipeline for funding. So there's a consistent funding pipeline that we can match things to. So these are sustainable projects. They're not just these one-off, put it somewhere, see what happens, maybe we have to adapt in another way. It's kind of a longer term planning effort. So with the flood mitigation framework, we're using an insurance gap analysis to understand where different parts of the county, if they have higher policy or higher claim numbers, how many policies are there, kind of understanding what that National Flood Insurance Program, how that plays a role in people's ability to apply for assistance if they need it, or just how well folks are protected, right? So we can kind of target the areas and see what folks are going to need based on their current coverage. So it's a flood mitigation framework. And then the Brownfields Redevelopment and Community Revitalization Project. This is basically a toolbox for the county to reactivate our Brownfield Redevelopment Program, which I believe has been dormant for a little while. It lives in community development, but the goal of this project is to put together a brownfields inventory that isn't just those EPA designated sites, Superfund sites, but it's the sites that community members see in our county that they think, oh, that would be a good spot for redevelopment of some kind that, would potentially also have some, contamination involved, but we can, we're taking the direction from the community. And then putting together a strategic plan for revitalizing those. So these two projects we're still working with Fernleaf to complete these projects. Both of them are going to be wrapped up at the end of May. And at the end, they're hoping to tie them together to have some kind of link where they both can be, related to each other, move forward. They're still kind of figuring out what that looks like.
Going back to the flood mitigation, does the county still have a hazard mitigation committee?
Yes.
All right, so
yes.
Years ago, I was on that, and they were responsible for doing a whole bunch of serious things required by the federal government, which then help reduce FEMA and insurance. Are they still doing that?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
And we're at CRS 2, which is the best on the East Coast.
Right.
Yeah.
They give folks 40% reduction in their insurance, flood insurance. So we're doing things to help citizens in Charleston County.
And were you saying there's gonna be a kind of transfer of the data from Fernleaf into that committee's
Exactly.
work? Okay.
Yes, yeah. That
I thought you said it
happening.
earlier, yeah.
The hazard mitigation plan was just adopted in December of '24, so the plan won't officially be adopted for 5 years until December of '29. But in the next 5 years, we're going to be integrating all this vulnerability data into the hazard mitigation plan. Okay, well, I'll pass it off to Allie to talk more about the climate action plan.
Alrighty, it's the last section of your packet if you wanted to see. These are just some graphs because at least personally, I find it a lot better to visualize sometimes what we're talking about. So in terms of the climate action plan implementation progress, I wanted to really lay it out for you guys. So out of the 53 strategies in our climate action plan, we are currently in progress with 16 of those strategies. And I do want to note that 53 is a little bit above the average for climate action plans, but because we want to kind of be like a trendsetter, we want to make sure that we are moving forward in a positive, sustainable fashion. We wanted to make sure that we were doing the best we could with all these strategies. So if you look at the bar graph, you'll be able to see the 5 different big moves on the bottom, and then that lighter green is going to be the amount that we have in progress, and then that darker green is how many that we haven't touched yet. So for big move 1, you see there's 11 that we haven't gotten started on, but we are in progress with 7. And then to further break it down, the pie chart basically just shows the focus of all the projects in a little bit different of a visual. So a majority of our projects right now are focused on that big move number 1, with almost 50% of them being, or 43% being focused on that.
So I would go, let's go back to that, because this, again, we're gonna have to have more check-ins, because this is off balance, right? And I do recognize, I was trying to look at the particular moves under at least 1, move on, but even beyond 1, things that are not started, 11 out of 18, why, in all this time. And I know we were hiring people, transition, et cetera. 15 out of, 19 not started, 6 out of 8 and 3 not started, 3 out of 4 and 4 not started, again, 1 of the 2 and 5. And then we would have to, kind of drill down to see specifically those things, and maybe it may not be like advocating to the state or whatever the case is. That may be something for us, other people to do, as a proxy, to some of the work that's happening, or I guess when we start engaging some of these external partners or convening some of these groups, that might be, some of these have more of an external facing responsiveness to them. And so I know it's been a year since we've had a meeting, and I'm very happy of the things that are happening. And I'm also concerned that there are still wide gaps in between the things that we need to do. This is year number 5. I've been talking about this since the first year. This is not new. Yeah. And so those are things, so in our Wednesday meeting, we'll revisit this, right? But again, these are the types of things, particularly for this advisory committee, to note. I love the presentation, but it's just not for presentation's sake, I hope. It's for discussion, it's for us to advise, it's for us to look at, like number 6, number 7. I mean, what can we do to help spur the work forward, because some of these things, I mean, it's just three of you, one of you, one. And so you can't really do all of the big moves with such a small staff. And so how do we supplement, that work and make certain that these things that we're accelerating, I'm not gonna be here forever. And so I would like to see some of this realized, before I go, one way or another.
I was looking at number 6 as well, and that's a state level issue, so would they bring that information up the chain to eventually land on somebody's desk? They can go to the state directly? Is that
Right,
how
so
that
I can go to the state directly. We from council can, make a resolution to the state. We can talk with our local delegation. There are things, right? And so I'm
We can
just
spread it out, to get more, bang for the buck when we add more to the communities.
Right.
That we're doing, yeah, got you.
Yeah, I'm just looking for, again, marching orders. Because some of these things you all can't necessarily do within yourselves, but then we need a list of things and then direction, because I mean, we very well can take it to the next place, but we just need to know,
Where you need our help at to push the program forward. Got it.
Just question, you talked about, kind of bottom up with the state, but isn't the state also doing something
Yeah.
way down?
Yes.
Do we have an update on that, or what the status is of the state's doing for sustainability, for like energy conservation?
Well, so the state has the House has recently passed their bill for addressing energy needs. I think that's House Bill 3306. So that is something that the state is looking at, restarting, the VC Sumner project was mentioned by the governor in his State of the State address. So, I mean, the state is moving in many directions energy wise, but I don't know if that's what you're asking.
Aren't you asking about the state's climate action plan?
Yeah, isn't there a climate
No,
action
Which
plan?
they
Gotcha.
actually submitted more than a year ago to EPA. And we have no idea what's happened to that. Is it still existing? Is that something that we can piggyback on?
And I've been following, even under the change of leadership, some of these initiatives have been hugely popular in Republican states. Therefore, I don't see them being dialed all the way back. Hugely popular. And so, again, and they've been an economic boom, right?
Well, even when we presented, originally when we presented the climate action plan to the county council, we talked about two major initiatives from that economic point of view, job creation point of view, and that is really how we would want to push this, because that way we stay away from, is this doing something there or not doing there? But it's really important for that. So maybe if we can get a handle on what is happening in the state, especially, right?
Yeah.
Especially based on Scott's question, especially in what the COG might do in the future.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can speak on that. My name's Catherine. I'm with the South Carolina Office of Resilience, and it's our office that was working on the Priority Climate Action Plan, the PCAP.
Right.
They're also doing that at the COG at a different scale through the CPRG grant from the EPA. So that finished up. I think it was published in the spring. Now we're working on the Priority Climate Action Plan, the Comprehensive Climate Action Plan, which we'll publish in December of this year. Still trying to figure out the funding and the federal transition, of course. But we are actively working on that in our office right now. I don't have this in front of me, so I'm not sure what number 6 are referring to, but
So
I'm happy to answer.
Number 6 is just acting for us to advocate for the state to update its building code to enhance energy performance and ensure safe buildings.
Yes, and those are also resolutions in our statewide resilience plan. I think it's called the statewide strategic resilience plan. And I'm not exactly sure on the current movement of that, but I can definitely get an update for this year.
For the report that was published in the spring, can we get a copy of that?
I'd be happy to share that.
Sure, you can get that to Molly. Molly can then get that.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, thank you.
And Molly, I know the team's brand new, but I
Yeah.
even looked through some of the things that are highlighted in yellow, for instance, number 5, which specifically affects my audience. I'd love to see the data or the details on that. So it says in progress. What does that mean?
Yeah.
How broadly are we reaching out to the development community with what do the incentives look like? It's been a year, so, you know, I'm just
Yeah.
racking my brain to think about what's the action behind that. So I think I would love to see some drill down in even the areas that we say we've started. So what does progress look like?
Yeah, yeah. Ally can speak to that in a little bit too.
Yeah.
We've got that
Mhm.
coming up.
Yeah. Okay, so, well, we kind of already talked about this a little bit. I was trying to kind of look at our capacity and, look what kind of like traction we already had based on the previous, individuals in this role, their projects. So we kind of had a big focus on big move number 1 and big move number 2, because that's where a lot of our grant funding came from originally, from Ariel and Karen, as well as that was, there was some big support, like different types of fundings and everything originally for big move 1 and 2, so affordable and resilient buildings, as well as sustainable and inclusive transportation. For affordable and resilient buildings, that's where we have the most actions as well. So those are kind of where we are honing in. But as we discussed earlier, that doesn't mean that we don't want to do any other projects in any of the other 5 moves. So we are working on continuously thinking about the other big moves, but just really focusing too on understanding and leveraging the projects that we already have in progress.
So let me, because I know some of this is political, so let me ask, because I know some things we, you know, can move forward with ease, and then other things we kind of tread lightly.
Yeah.
And so I want to make sure we're not being given directives to not do certain things.
No.
Or to, you know, be slow in our forward movement on some of these. I just want to be sure that we're not doing that.
We are not doing that.
Yeah.
Especially since you're the chair.
Thank you so
And
much.
you started this whole thing.
Thank you so much.
So I totally get
We
it.
need to, you know, put our feet on the
Right.
electric gas pedal.
Right.
And you know, I think some of it, there's a lot of activity that's happening. That's why it's great to have this group here. I know I work a lot with the Home Builders Association, and we're doing flooding and doing things in that area.
Right.
And so having this group here, some things are already happening. And so it's a matter of trying to pull that up and say, hey, we are working on number 6 or 2. Yeah.
Those strategies, I mean, we have 53, right? And so it takes all of them in concert.
To get down that.
That's right.
And Mr. Chairman, I look at number 6, and to Walt's point, I'm in Walt's ear all the time. But number 6 is probably an easy win. Like, there are some things that we've not identified we're doing that are probably not that hard to do. That we could look at some isolated pockets to how to accelerate the movement, to the chairman's comment about pushing the electric cutoff. So there probably are some, now that you guys are fully staffed up, we should dive into some of those, particularly to the development community.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, definitely.
I mean, and from a development standard, I mean, that number 5 is really big, because I mean, those upgrades can really affect your bottom line, correct?
It can, and you stepped out for this, Mr. Chairman, but I'm curious because I don't hear a lot of discussion about this in the development community. So for it to be said it's in progress, that's why I asked you about that, because it's not something that I talk a lot about to our folks, nor am I hearing it from our folks. So I'd want to push on what is actually being done there, and then are there opportunities to accelerate, particularly if it's incentive based, which is obviously selfishly the best way to move that forward. So that's why I asked that question.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. You want to get into it?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, well, this, we put this sort of in the middle. Just a kind of quick check-in on the project updates that we have here. This was in your packet, and it's a little bit of a more deeper dive, more detail about the projects that we have in progress right now. And you can see some of them are completed, some of them are paused because of the federal funding freeze. Some are in progress, and then we have some prospective projects as well. So there are, you know, maybe we can go into, Ally, if you want to go into some of your projects a little more closely, and then if we have other questions to dive into these projects, we can do that after.
Yeah, so these are just some of base project plans that we have kind of in the works. So the first one is an environmental guidelines for new development or retrofits, primarily focused right now on commercial. So Mount Pleasant has a environmental guidelines document. So we kind of wanted to mimic it a little bit about that, but basically it's a set of guidelines and they have 4 different categories, and we can discuss what the categories would look like. But for example, it'd be electrification, flood mitigation, or different things like that. And it's kind of a base, it's a point system. So the developers are able to kind of pick and choose what fits best with their project. And then Mount Pleasant has exemptions or incentives based on that. But this is the very early stages. We're hoping that we'll be able to kind of nail down more of like what it looks like. We are talking to our other departments within the county. So we're talking with planning and zoning, and hopefully we'll be able to have everyone's input from different departments to make sure it's a collaborative effort. As of right now, we just wanted it to be a guideline. Once we get it all up and running and hopefully have something solidified, then we're able to discuss if this is something we want to attach incentives to or make mandatory. But it's very early discussions and meetings to make sure that everyone that we are working with is having a say of what they want to do, and it's really working towards our overall environmental goals.
How long has Mount Pleasant had this?
I believe,
This summer.
yeah,
they
so
just
it's
adopted
fairly
it.
recent.
County River Resiliency and Sustainability Committee.
Okay. And you might know this, but Mount Pleasant has a history of, didn't do any multifamily development for like 70 years. So when I think of Mount Pleasant and I think of their zoning code, I think of what's actually just putting things up, but and this is great. If they're working through it, that's great.
And that just expired.
Yeah.
The
They
moratorium.
just,
on
yeah,
multifamily.
yeah.
I am, again, I don't know what word to use, because again, all the work from this new division can't be dependent solely on grants and external funding sources. Right, everything I see on hold or pause because grant award, no funding source identified. So we're going through the budget season now. I've started meeting, with the administrator and with, the finance folk. And, so I would like for y'all to contemplate a number from, that would help push the work forward. And I'll work on that. Yep. Because we need money.
So would the purpose of this group here help to prioritize those items that we would like to see pushed forward?
Yeah, absolutely.
So anybody have any suggestions on how to do that as a committee?
To the chairman's point, I think some of these just going through the list might be things that we can even talk about more quickly, like for example, number 30. 5, advocate for the DCD cogs and investigate the inclusion of electric ferries. I mean, we have to pause here, but what does that look like? Is that just a conversation?
Well, I know Mayor Cogswell has been working, we had several meetings recently around this, the city's presence to the ferry. So there may be some work ongoing that perhaps has not been connected to that point of the ferry, but number 35.
Well, and if we're talking specifically to for ferries, we can find capital funding to build out docks and purchase actual ferry boats. It's long-term operation and maintenance costs that would be a consistent source of funding.
Very practical, especially with this new West Ashley, path that's being developed to connect the city to the peninsula of West Ashley. I mean, at some point, along with biking and walking, as a pedestrian, it could be the case that, having that kind of transit across there, talking about boardwalks and that sort of thing, at some point, they're gonna have to go under the bridge and create some sort of whatever. And so that's just not one area. But Northbridge also comes to mind, as it relates to, kind of points of interest that could be connected. I do have meetings with, the mayors as well, so, it'd be helpful to know this stuff, so I can add this on my agenda with that.
Another project plan that is in the works, and we're having discussions with outside partners such as the Sustainability Institute, is to prioritize education programs for weatherization techniques for different residents. So I'm hoping that we'll be able to really help the community in different ways to give them ways, either weatherization kits or ways that they can kind of conserve energy within their home and help them.
I see that it's paused.
So we have a grant that Ariel made and got. So the grant project is paused for the 20 different audits and weatherization. This was going to be a separate education outreach effort, so we could kind of still work on that goal while not having to rely on the.
And the reason this was paused was because the federal government pulled back.
Right, I know that.
Right, we're taking it all away and it's just shy of awarding the contract. We did all the legwork back here and we're just waiting the funds drop. And it is also a partnership with Palmetto CAP and so forth that they do this kind of stuff. I sit on their board, so it's just working with them to make sure that we're getting the word out. That these programs exist.
Just don't have money.
We don't have money. And that grant was about, what, 75,000?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Right. Yeah, we can't do this kind of work, nickel and dime.
Oh, you gotta collaborate with all these other agencies.
And figure out where some of the dollars are coming from. I mean, at some point, the work can't be supplanted. We have to supplement the work. So I mean, as the county, we have to put some skin in it too.
An additional alternative that as a county, educating the community of taking advantage of the electric companies, what energy audits. I mean,
Exactly.
When I used to do presentations and I would ask how many people in this audience had an energy audit, probably one hand went up. They're really good and they're free. And if you have a home, and if you call Dominion today, they'd probably be at a tomorrow because they don't have any other place to go. So are we pushing that? Because if the people in the community realize how much money they could save, they might be able to take some of that savings and invest it to make the weatherization and electrification that's necessary. The same way that we as in the government do.
Right.
Well, yeah.
Reverend, to your point, there are some things on here that perhaps don't take money to accelerate, and the county has other tools in the toolbox. And so I look at some things that I've already identified, 5 being one of them, that encourage developers and incentives. But then on the backside, number 31, review the land development regulations, consider kind of positive design solutions. I'd like to learn more about that because it could be that the county can provide density overlays or from looking through the planning lens to incent what wants to occur there by giving some element that's not currently as part of the existing portfolio in that piece of our parcel. So I think there are probably some market-driven tools in addition to pure grant.
Canadian advocating Port of Charleston to provide community assured power services. I think we're in some kind of negotiation triangle with them right now.
Right.
I can use that, as something, right?
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm just saying that as we look at things, when it becomes, and I'm not eating and sleeping these big moves and strategies every day, but somebody needs to be bringing it to my attention, saying, well, hey, you might be able to do this.
Yeah.
And I might be able to do this.
Fantastic.
Support the airport. I'm on the aviation board, 37. I mean, we're embedded, in places that we can begin to at least influence the direction. of some of these things. We don't have to say, oh, this is a strategy number 37. By the time they realize that they're involved in it, we've checked the box.
Right. Yes, absolutely.
So another key thing that we want to highlight is the increased events and outreach. A lot of our strategies have like education portions or outreach portions. So I really want to make sure that we are collaborating, talking to internal and external partners throughout this process, and strengthen partnerships with everyone between different municipalities, residents, outside organizations. So just to highlight a little bit, this is our plan out toward through April right now of all the current outreach we have, and that ranges from compost workshops, what the resilience and sustainability team is, as well as our climate action plan. This is just what we have planned right now, but I'm open to more opportunities or discussions for this. I just wanted to let you know and see that we are trying to be representative in our county.
This may be good in terms of what we're talking about and partnerships and so forth. When we look at those different number strategies and say, hey, the city of North Charleston doing this, we bring them in on this and box check or need funding to put in the budget for XXX and those type things. And this may something like this maybe.
Is there a calendar online that would be easy to know? But this would be really good to have online, very accessible to the public.
Sure.
It'd be fun to see that. And then also, just going off what you just said, is on this big moves page, you've got 5 big moves. Maybe if you went to some of these and just had this one page printed out on an e-size with a little blank next to it, if you know somebody, write their name in and just very simply gather some simple information that way. I'm sure y'all are doing lots of other ways to engage, but somebody might slip in with, oh, we have a little baby community board that does this. And you can contact me or something like that. That'd be very simple and easy to do that. All of these. Maybe dry erase so that you can erase these.
That's a
And
good
I
idea.
put myself on this committee, this advisory committee on purpose so that we can move forward, right? We don't need just somebody taking up a seat and not really full-throatedly pushing, the moves and strategies forward. And so if we're serious about the work, as Scott just said, I mean, we need to find the gaps, find the areas where we are not as sure, based on just our capacity, and then figure out, I mean, I listen to all of the individuals, the strengths of people right here around this table. I mean, all these moves can be done in short order. The regional, statewide, ability, to move the work forward. We have people in this room, that can connect us. And so I'm excited. And then at the same token, I'm more aware of what we need to do from our end to help support.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think it's all about those partnerships, relationships, collaborating, making sure we know what each other is doing, and then we can really advance all of this work. And I think with the start of this Regional Resilience Collaborative, as well as the start of this internal working group at the county, we'll be able to really, make some progress, and also, like you're saying, identify these gaps. And I really appreciate all this feedback, because this is giving us a lot of direction on how to approach all of this, because there are so many angles, so many directions that we could go. So I'm taking a lot of notes. So yeah, since we've got this might have been a good slide for us to talk about.
Just also that's you should have started.
I know.
Yeah,
Should have
but
skipped to this one.
before you get that, because I think we're getting somewhere in direction. So for example, number 7, support educational session builders. That's just one example. So if we were going to have a session with builders, what
I circled that.
Yeah, what-
Conditional we can achieve that.
what would you want to happen during that session? If we want to have educational sessions with people within the community, what do we want to tell the people about the climate action plan that would relate to them?
Right.
You
Different
know,
audiences.
talk about things like what they could do within their homes and things like that, what they could do within their community. The same way we did that individual things on composting, those types of conferences. So maybe picking up on.
That was the city strategy too.
That's right.
Was to take their climate action plan, and get it out to the community.
Right, having made 30 presentations on that, but that was important because people then started to question and saying, what can we do as individuals? And so maybe we can create an educational program and with bullets, what we would be presenting. And then ask some of us on this committee if we would be willing to volunteer to go out and do those presentations. There's so many community groups that we can share this with. And that would be able to move towards getting past, the point that you just mentioned.
Yeah, definitely. That's a good idea. Yeah. So yeah, we maybe should have pulled this slide up a little earlier, but these are the current grant funds that we have for the projects that we mentioned. So currently right now, for I guess until the end of this fiscal year, we have about $8.3 million potentially in grants. You'll see that some of them are paused. The top two, and those are both from one's from the Federal Highway Administration, right, and then from the Department of Energy. So those are paused. We have 2 projects completed. Those were the 3 electric vehicles. I guess, yeah, 2 projects, 3 electric vehicles that were purchased before we were hired. And those were through the South Carolina Department of Energy. Those are grant funded. And then the 2 projects I mentioned, the flood mitigation framework, as well as the brownfields project, those are with the CSCI grant, the Climate Smart Communities Initiative grant. That's in progress, should be wrapping up at the end of May. And then we just submitted an application for, with Joint Base, with the Air Base, to develop a microgrid on the Air Base. And those funds are from the South Carolina Department of Veterans Affairs, and really, really hopeful that we will be awarded those funds. That's $1 million. And the key with that project too is that it's developing a microgrid for the Air Base, but it's also looking outside of the Air Base at the surrounding communities that also have, some infrastructure needs, and they're designated as community disaster resilience zones by FEMA. So that we're looking outside the scope of just the Air Base. That's important to remember. And then I put these other 2 projects in the bottom here because the county isn't directly, engaged in these projects, but we're supporting, and we're part of it. So you all might have seen that North Charleston was just awarded the EPA Community Change Grant with the Sustainability Institute, and that was $11.4 million. You probably all saw that. And then there's also a RECE grant, the Building a Resilient and Efficient Southeast Collaborative Grant. That's sort of another attempt to build a collaborative, is what it seems like. That we've been engaging with them and have committed 120 hours of staff time over the next 5 years to build this collaborative. So it's, again, there's so many community efforts happening and popping up, and we're trying to be there and have a presence, but also try to harness everything that's happening.
It's the 11.4 for retrofitting.
That was for affordable housing,
Okay.
And I think there were some other elements involved in that project as well.
I think they're building houses.
They're building, affordable housing.
I think, if I may, I think it's both. I think they're building homes, new homes, as well as retrofitting pre-existing homes.
Okay.
Oh, great. So you're right. We do have all of our projects are grant funded. if there are other sources of funding, I'd love to talk about that. Yeah. So that was the end of our presentation for the project work that we're doing. But I do want to open it, make sure that everyone who has thoughts on kind of feedback on how we're approaching the climate action plan, how we're approaching this resilience work, that if there are any other comments about that, I'd love to hear that from you all before we start talking about, next steps on what this group's role might be and if we need to change our rules and procedures because of that. So any final thoughts on our project work plan? Okay, then let's move forward with
We haven't really talked about the next steps for us based on everything we said today. So
Right.
Maybe we need to spend just a few minutes
Right.
and to hear from other members of the committee. What do you think our next steps should be based on just what happened in the last hour?
Right.
My immediate thought is based on what you said earlier, sorry, our program the 53 parts of the big move. I feel like for me, it sounds like I have a going forward of take those 53, look down the list, see if I know individuals, maybe talk to those individuals outside and say, what are y'all doing? Does it fit within this? And then providing that information back here, maybe to compile a committee to give to you, or just, I don't know the best way to handle that, or just to give to y'all directly. That might be a lot of sorting for you, but it might be valuable. And then also, or the second part, just any funding agencies that we know, ways that, as a university member, I'm always thinking of ways to collaborate with, local governments and regional governments. So how does that work? And what do we see in the institution that might have joint collaborative funding opportunities? And then we can bring in our funding group, our grants office, and say, hey, you know anybody? And then they can help maybe facilitate that too, and get a little extra resource.
Yeah, I like what it says is that we have homework to do, to bring it back, consolidate it, and then come back and say, here's what we got. And then some kind of way, get some figures in there as you're going through the budget process.
That's why I moved sooner than later, but I saw the 8 million, I can go from there. I can kind of parse, the things that are done in that 8 million.
And some may spur on meetings. Adrian just sent me a text, hey, let's get together on this.
Yeah, we're gonna have a meeting.
Yeah.
Great.
Awesome.
Because we do the same thing in the
Right.
construction stuff, so let's get together and talk about it. Some of that.
It's great.
So,
Okay, we'll take those.
probably
as
set
next.
some guidelines that say, hey, everybody look at these 53 and just as you said, and get it back to the group, the division, to put it all together, and then we come back together.
Or maybe also take the 53. I know it's homework for everyone here, for you to make a little bit more detailed comment on what's happening or not happening, obviously.
Sure.
And then for us to come back with a question or a comment regarding each one of those 53, if we can do all that before our next meeting.
Right, and if we wait as long as June, we would have missed so much time.
Okay.
In that, right, yeah, we would already be the new budget almost by that point. If we waited until June, but I do agree that some additional meetings outside of this advisory committee,
Right.
On various moves or strategies, y'all are working every day. We're meeting officially every week, and this is always on my agenda as it relates to, updates and wanting to know more and figuring out what we can do, to help move this work forward. So, I just think that in the interim, activities and engagements that we need to have.
Sure.
Or we could have a special meeting. I mean, we've done that before, when necessary. So if we went through what we just all agreed to, I think the frog is passing.
I feel great now.
But that you could get some information from us, and then let's put our heads together. And if we need to meet at the end of April or beginning of May, possibly that as well. Is that a good idea? Okay.
Yeah.
Why has it been a year since the last?
Well, because you've had some change in your staffing,
Oh,
right?
Yeah.
And then, I'll be blunt, you're bringing a new, fresh approach to this committee.
Me?
Yes, which is very appreciated by all the, am I speaking for everyone?
Sorry.
For every member of the committee, and I'll leave it at that.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's all.
And not only that, when we were going through the approval process, remember how we went through each one of those and made sure it read
Right.
appropriately so we could get
Right.
the support?
Yeah.
It was all through that approval process that we had to go through to get to where we are today.
I remember.
Yeah.
I was there.
Okay, okay. Well, yeah, we can definitely talk about the proposed meeting schedule. These proposed dates are just quarterly dates. It's second Tuesday
I
of
think those are good.
quarterly. But then in the interim, we can connect, individually, we can have independent meetings and talk through.
Yeah, later, let's move.
Yeah.
Possibly, late April, meeting.
Sure, late April. Okay.
Then assign some time frame where you want these answers or information, feedback on the 53,
Yeah.
what you're doing,
So
or
we're-
suggestions.
Probably rely on Ally to be able to coordinate that. Molly might be
Yes.
out of here. We'll go around.
Yeah, we'll talk
Then-
about
I'm
it. Yeah.
very tied up, so.
So if we upgrade the new website,
Yeah.
it may be important to make certain that some of the information that was noted, that it's a little bit more interactive or whatever, for the public to be able to know
Mhm.
some of these dates, places where you all are, your movement around the region, county, wherever.
Right. Outreach. Okay.
You want to, while we're sitting here, April 29th, Tuesday?
Yeah, so I would say let them bounce that to my
Yeah,
folk and then.
sure.
Okay, good,
and then
great,
let's
okay.
Push a meeting date
Sounds
out
good.
and
Thank
see
you.
if it works well for
Okay.
everybody.
Sounds
Because I
good.
think I'm probably the most complicated person in the room.
Molly, because
like
it
it.
has
Yeah.
been a year, I looked at the 53 points. I know there's background, and I'm sure it's buried somewhere in the emails, and I filed all these in the same folder. If you guys could read forward some background information on sort of the detail behind the point. I know that exists somewhere, in the consultants, I remember presentations, want to do this.
Sure.
I'll just volunteer myself, I'd like to reacclimate myself to some of that, because it has been a while.
Maybe we should have a meeting. As well.
Yeah. Just sort of a breakdown of how we got here.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because again, having certain constituencies pushing things forward will also, help us with our momentum.
Right. That sounds good. Yeah, we'll coordinate a meeting late April and then reach out to you all for independent meetings as well. Well, that's great. I think what I wanted to bring up with this slide was that, originally the rules and procedures were about the RSAC developing, advising on the development of the climate action plan and the hazard vulnerability assessment. And what we're talking about now is, really getting into the weeds, getting into more detail, talking about how, right? It's not just like the what, it's the how. So we may want to revisit the rules and procedures to, reflect that,
We still
right?
want to be advisory, and so, once we come up with all these things,
Mhm.
then you let me take it from there.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. Great.
Yeah. And the only thing is I may have the most complicated, I come from a member organization, so if we're gonna vote on anything specific, I just have to
Yeah, we
have
wouldn't
the
be
people tell
voting,
me,
right,
okay,
we wouldn't be
okay.
voting, so I
Yeah.
mean, we would be compiling
Mhm.
lists of things potentially, and then if we know of individuals that can kind of help move certain things in a certain direction, that would be voting, that's just done. You take that and run with it and tell me how it went. If I'm going to the aviation authority, they don't know what I'm doing, I'm just
Yeah.
kind of moving and advancing the work, Hey, that was done, you can see the fruition, we're embedding ourselves. And so some of those things, it's not really, we're not, so even with your constituent groups, we're not obligating them to anything. And even as it relates to some of these things, specifically with financial implications, it has to go back to council anyway.
Right.
And so, so let's just get the lists together and the things, And then some of these are your day-to-day activities or essential functions in your job. So once we get it approved by council, y'all go to work every day. I mean, that's just what it is.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, great. And we'll set these dates and then others before June. And then, oh, we have public comment.
Do we have anybody on? Oh,
Oh, let's see. Fred. Well, how should I do this here? Like that. Should I stop sharing? So would you like to open for public?
Yeah, do we have any public comments? Good, seeing none. Seeing none. Any other comments from any of the membership?
We just encourage you to consider connecting with senator representatives to encourage them to make grant funding continually available. That's something jurisdictions I've been working with have been doing. Specifically, Town of Somerville met with representatives from Senator Scott's office recently, just to encourage them that it does benefit us economically and our continued resilience and sustainability work.
With no other comments, entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Thank you. Second, all in favor? Welcome, this is really a great day.